A little boy asked to mow my lawn for $5 to buy his mom medicine. I gave him the job and a trust fund for college. The fortress of solitude. I live in a house that is too big for one person. It's a 4-bedroom colonial at the end of a cul-de-sac in a neighborhood where the grass is manicured with laser precision, and the neighbors communicate mostly through polite nods from behind the wheels of luxury SUVs. I'm Thomas. At 48, I had made it. I sold a software consultancy firm 3 years ago for enough money to never work again. But success has a funny way of isolating you. I spent my days trading stocks from my home office, drinking expensive scotch, and convincing myself that I was happy with the silence. I had built a fortress to keep the world out. I didn't want complications. I didn't want noise. I certainly didn't want to interact with the messy, unpredictable nature of other people's problems. Then came a Saturday morning that shattered my carefully constructed peace. It started with a timid, barely audible knock on my heavy oak front door. I almost ignored it. Solicitors and neighbors wanting to discuss HOA fees were usually the only ones who dared to ring the bell. But something about the rhythm of the knock, tap, tap, pause, tap, sounded hesitant. It sounded small. I opened the door, prepared to be annoyed. Instead, I found myself looking down, way down, at a scruffy pair of sneakers that would change the trajectory of my life. The pitch. "Excuse me, mister." The voice cracked. Standing on my porch was a boy who couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old. He was skinny, the kind of skinny that makes elbows and knees look too big for the rest of the limbs. His hair was a sandy mess that hadn't seen a comb in days, and he was wearing a yellow t-shirt that hung off his shoulders like a dress. I was wondering if you need your grass cut," he stammered, gripping a piece of notebook paper so tight his knuckles were white. "I have a mower. It's down the street. I do a good job, I promise." I looked past him at my lawn. My landscaping crew had just been there on Tuesday. It was immaculate. "It looks pretty short to me, kid," I said, my hand already moving to close the door. "Please," he blurted out, stepping forward. "I'll do the edges too, and I'll pick up the sticks. I only charge $5. $5. The number hung in the air. In this neighborhood, you couldn't get a kid to walk your dog for less than $20. $5 was desperate. It was a plea, not a price quote. I looked at his face. His eyes were red-rimmed, and there was a frantic energy vibrating off him that made me pause. $5, I asked, leaning against the doorframe. "That's a lot of work for $5. "I need it," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Today. The machine." I don't know why I said yes. Maybe it was the boredom, maybe it was the sheer absurdity of the offer. "All right," I sighed, "go get your mower." He took off running. He returned 2 minutes later pushing a lawnmower that looked like it had survived a war. It was an ancient, rusted red push mower that seemed to weigh more than he did. He had to lean his entire body weight into the handle just to get it up my driveway. I stood on the porch, coffee in hand, watching him. It was painful to watch. He struggled to pull the starter cord. Yank, sputter, die. He tried again. Yank, sputter, die. He wiped sweat from his forehead, leaving a smudge of grease, and set his jaw. On the 5th try, the machine roared to life, coughing out a cloud of blue smoke. He attacked my lawn with a ferocity I hadn't expected. The mower was too big for him. On the turns, he had to hop slightly to swing the front wheels around. But he didn't stop. He missed spots and had to go back. He struggled with the slight incline near the sidewalk. As I watched, the cynicism I wore like armor began to crack. We live in a world of passive income and hacks. We want the reward without the sweat. But here was this child, physically outmatched by a piece of rusty machinery, fighting for every inch of grass because he needed $5. It forced me to remember a time before the wire transfers and the stock options, when effort was the only currency I had. The transaction. It took him an hour to do what a professional crew could do in 15 minutes. When he cut the engine, the silence rushed back into the neighborhood, but it felt different now. He walked up to the porch, his face streaked with sweat and grime, panting heavily. "All done, mister," he said, trying to stand tall. I reached into my pocket. I had a $20 bill. I held it out to him. "Here," I said, "good job." He looked at the bill and shook his head. I said, $5. I don't have change for a 20. "Keep it," I said. "It's a tip." He hesitated. His eyes locked onto the bill with a hunger that was uncomfortable to witness. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. You worked hard." He took the money, and for a second I thought he was going to cry. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you so much." Then he didn't walk away. He didn't ask if I had more work. He asked a question that stopped me cold. "Do you know where the Walgreens is? The one with the pharmacy?" "Yeah," I said, pointing down the main road. "It's about a mile that way. Why?" "I have to go get my mom's medicine," he said, clutching the $20 bill like it was a lifeline. "She's sick. She can't get out of bed. The medicine costs $4.50. I checked." The shadow. He grabbed the handle of his mower and started dragging it down the driveway. "I'll come back for the mower later," he yelled over his shoulder. "I gotta run." He took off sprinting down the sidewalk, his sneakers slapping the pavement. I stood there for a moment. The smart part of my brain, the part that managed risk for a living, told me to go inside. "It's not your problem. You gave him $20. You did your good deed." But the human part of me, the part that had been dormant for years, couldn't move. "She can't get out of bed. The medicine costs $4.50. I went to my garage, got into my car, and slowly drove in the direction he had run. I wasn't stalking him. I was verifying. I needed to know if the world was as cruel as I suspected, or if the boy was just a good storyteller. I saw him 3 blocks away, running with that awkward, tired gait of a kid who has pushed himself too far. I drove past him and pulled into the Walgreens parking lot, watching from my rearview mirror. Minutes later, he burst through the automatic doors. I waited. 10 minutes passed. He emerged holding a small white paper bag, walking slower now, clutching the bag to his chest. He didn't buy candy. He didn't buy a soda. He bought one thing. He sat on the curb for a second, caught his breath, and then started the long walk back. The truth. I didn't confront him at the store. I drove back home. Waited for him to retrieve his mower. And then, feeling like a creep but unable to stop myself, I followed him at a distance as he pushed the mower home. He didn't live in my neighborhood. He walked 3 streets over, crossed the main avenue, and entered the Oaks, an ironic name for a complex of rundown duplexes that had seen better days. The siding was peeling. The lawns were patches of dirt and weeds. He pushed the mower behind a unit with a torn screen door. I parked my car down the block and walked up. I could hear voices through the thin walls. "Liam, did you get it?" A woman's voice, weak, raspy. "Yeah, Mom, I got it. And the man gave me $20. We can get pizza tonight." 20? Liam, you didn't beg, did you? "No, I mowed his lawn, I promised." I stood on the cracked sidewalk, feeling like an intruder in a sacred space. This boy, 8 years old, was the provider. He was the nurse. He was the man of the house. The shame I felt for my own comfortable, insulated life washed over me. I had been annoyed by a knock on the door while this kid was carrying the weight of survival on his small shoulders. The intervention. I knocked on their door. The silence that followed was immediate. Then Liam opened it, still wearing his yellow shirt. His eyes went wide. "Mister, did I do a bad job? Do you want the money back?" "No, Liam," I said, stepping onto the concrete slab porch. "The lawn looks great. Is your mom home?" "Who is it?" the woman's voice called out. I stepped inside. The apartment was clean but sparse. Sarah lay on a sagging beige sofa. She was young, maybe early 30s, but her face was gaunt, her skin pale. She tried to sit up, pulling a blanket around her. "I'm Thomas," I said. "I'm the guy Liam did the landscaping for." "Landscaping?" She managed a weak smile. "He has a rusty mower we found on the curb." He did a great job, I lied. But I actually came because, well, I have a lot of work that needs to be done, a big project, and I need a regular guy. I was wondering if I could hire Liam on a weekly retainer. Sarah looked at me, her eyes narrowing. She had the sharp intuition of the poor. She smelled charity a mile away. We don't take handouts, sir. It's not a handout, I said, looking her in the eye. My back is bad. I can't do the yard work. I need him. I'll pay him $50 a week to keep the yard clear and water the plants. It was a ridiculous amount for a kid, and we both knew it. But she looked at Liam, who was looking at her with hope, and then she looked at the medicine bottle on the table. Okay, she whispered, but he has to actually do the work. The routine. That summer changed us. Every Saturday, Liam showed up. I bought a new mower, a self-propelled Honda that he could actually handle, and told him it was company equipment. We fell into a rhythm. He would mow, and then we would sit on the back porch. I'd drink coffee, he'd drink a Gatorade I kept stocked for him. I learned about his life. His dad took off 3 years ago. His mom had an autoimmune condition that flared up when she was stressed or couldn't afford her meds, making it impossible for her to keep a steady job. They were in a cycle. She'd get sick, lose hours, lose money, get sicker. I started needing help with other things. Hey Liam, I need someone to help me organize the garage. We just moved boxes around. Hey Liam, I ordered too much pizza, can you take this home? I wasn't just fixing their financial gaps, I was fixing my own loneliness. I taught him how to throw a spiral with a football. I taught him how to shake hands firmly. In return, he taught me that resilience isn't about being tough. It's about loving someone so much that you refuse to fail them. The crisis. November came, and with it the cold. The grass stopped growing, but I kept finding reasons for Liam to come over, raking leaves, salting the driveway. Then one Saturday, he didn't show up. I waited an hour, then I drove to the duplex. An ambulance was in the driveway. My heart hammered against my ribs. I ran up to the door just as the paramedics were wheeling Sarah out. She was unconscious, an oxygen mask over her face. Liam was standing by the door, sobbing, holding a stuffed animal that looked like it was for a toddler. Liam, I shouted. He saw me and collapsed into my legs. She wouldn't wake up. I tried to give her the water, but she wouldn't wake up. I rode with them to the hospital. It was pneumonia, complicated by her underlying condition, and the fact that they had been rationing the heat in the apartment to save money. Sitting in that sterile waiting room, holding the hand of a terrified boy, I realized that $50 a week wasn't a solution. It was a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. I had been playing at being a savior while they were drowning. I needed to stop being a nice neighbor and start being a human being with resources. The escalation. Sarah survived, but the doctor told me privately that she couldn't go back to that drafty apartment. She needed stability, warmth, and consistent care. I made a phone call to my lawyer. Then I made a phone call to a property management firm I used for investments. When Sarah was discharged a week later, I didn't take them back to the Oaks. I drove them to a small, 2-bedroom ranch house 3 blocks from my own home. It was one of my rental properties that had just become vacant. "What is this?" Sarah asked, leaning on a walker. "This is a rental," I said. "The rent is exactly what you were paying at the duplex, but the utilities are included, and I've already paid the lease for the next 2 years." "I can't accept this," she cried. "Thomas, why?" "Because Liam mowed my lawn," I said, looking at the boy who was currently running loops around the front yard. "And because I wasted 20 years making money for myself, and I finally found a better way to spend it." I didn't tell her that I had also set up a direct payment for her medical bills. Dignity is a fragile thing. I let her believe she was just getting a lucky break on rent. The future. That was 10 years ago. Last week I sat in the front row of a high school auditorium. When they called Liam Miller to the stage, The young man who walked across wasn't the scrawny kid in the yellow t-shirt. He was 6 feet tall, captain of the track team and valedictorian. He looked out into the crowd, found his mom, who was healthy, glowing, and working as a paralegal, and then he found me. He gave me a nod. After the ceremony, we went to dinner. I handed him an envelope. "What's this, another lawn mowing job?" he joked. His voice was deep now. "Open it." Inside were the documents for a trust fund I had started the day I met him. I had taken the salary I would have paid a professional landscaping crew over the last 10 years, invested it aggressively, and added a 0 or 2. It was enough for 4 years at the university he had been accepted to, plus expenses. "You earned this," I told him as he stared at the paper in shock. "You earned it the day you refused to take $20 because you hadn't done $20 worth of work. You taught me that character is the only currency that matters. The return on investment." People ask me about my best investment. They expect me to talk about the tech boom or real estate. They expect me to talk about compound interest. But the math is simple. I invested $5 initially, then a bit of time, then some resources that I wouldn't have missed anyway. The return: I saved a family. I gained a son in every way that matters. I watched a boy who thought his only value was manual labor grow into a man who believes he can change the world. We often think that changing the world requires grand gestures or millions of dollars. But sometimes, it just requires opening the door when you want to keep it shut. It requires looking down at a scruffy pair of sneakers and seeing the desperation and the hope standing on your doormat. Liam bought his mom medicine that day, but he bought me something too. He bought me back my humanity, and that was worth a hell of a lot more than $5.